The moment you put yourself like this person out of the driving seat and into the passenger seat, you just let life drive life. Everything just automatically gets taken care of. Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning. Welcome back to inthekhud. This is 2nd September, 10:13 a.m. and we're doing things in the AM today because this is the only way that I can actually end up going to the gym. So just for the record, I haven't gone to the gym in the past 2 weeks. Last Tuesdays when I went to the gym, because in between there was a sick situation and then the whole week I was very busy with work, so I couldn't go to the gym. So I'm gonna go to the gym evening, and I feel like this time, like 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., if I can devote that time to inthekhud, it'll be a lot easier, because towards the end of the day it becomes like unnecessarily burdensome, and then there are instances where I end up not documenting, which is not something I want to do. This daily documentation is something that really helps. The moment you put yourself like this person out of the driving seat and into the passenger seat, you just let life drive life. Everything just automatically gets taken care of, right? Things which you weren't understanding how to do, I think that's what they call grace. Is like grace just manifests itself, and whatever is needed at that point in time just appears out of nowhere. And I think that's the beauty of life, that you don't really have to do everything. I mean, you don't have to do anything actually. But yeah, not drifting too much into that, just getting back to the tasks at hand. 2 things that I have to document today. One is the entire scene, the beach scene. I'll first show it to you and then we'll see. A lot of things I learned specifically with AI as well, which I'm going to go through. And the second thing I'm going to document is IRender. That's some interesting stuff there. So this has been a trend of lately. Like, you see my folder structure for all these single projects that I'm making is so big, like 17 items in one folder, and usually it's about 3 to 4 GB. Like, this is 10 GB. I think it's because of the AI renders or some deforum. Is deforum taking? Yeah, 1.3. Anyway, so I'm going to try and show the export here. So this is kind of like a short film that I've made in, I would say, less than a day, like completely less than a day. So let me play this. So this is the video that we worked on, and of course you see this entire scene. The entire beach scene is not something that I've made from scratch. I bought it off of cgtrader.com for $20. The ocean that you see here, that's something that I've made. So the ocean material I'm going to describe. Behind there's an HDRI, and all these trees I've basically added a bit of displacement, so they're moving, but it's not actually very visible that the trees have wind on them or any sort of displacement. I mean, if you were to like look very closely, you will probably understand. But anyway, this entire direction, the camera is gonna go this way for the aerial shots, and then this way is just something I figure myself, no kind of reference or anything. Then over here, this again, the direction for this whole thing, there's gonna be a coconut falling from the tree. We're gonna see inside the coconut that there is nothing. Then we're gonna come back and see this Storia bottle, the brand coconut water, is just sitting behind, and then it comes out, and then we zoom into the bottle, and then the entire AI stuff starts. So this entire AI stuff is done like using this frame sent into deforum stable diffusion and giving it a few prompts. This is something I had put to render overnight. Yesterday morning only. I spent like 1.5 hours or so trying to render this. And then importantly, you see here, over here, every single frame there was a different bottle being generated. So I took those single frames into Photoshop, every single frame, and then I tried adding the brand bottle here, which if you look very closely, looks a bit fake though. but that's one thing I want to document, is like how you can do that if you want to. And then towards the end there's another scene which with like a sunset environment, and we replace the tree with the bottle this time, just to put an emphasis that this world is like some, I don't know, there was so little time for execution that more or less things are just spontaneous, like at the moment just taking a decision sort of. So what is the most important thing that I've learned here with this scene? The most important thing that I learned was optimization. Like my scene was not optimized, which is why when I was trying to render the scene inside Blender in my own system, it was taking 1 minute and 50 seconds, almost 2 minutes, to render a single frame. And because I was on a very strong deadline for this, I could not afford to do that whole render on my system, which is like RTX 3060 Ti, which is why I had to use like a GPU service like IRender. So in my Blender project, I don't quite know where to begin with documenting, because I made no notes or anything. I'm just gonna spontaneously see whatever works. The process for making this entire thing is, you see there are 3 scenes here. I like to work in scenes because that way things are a little more organized. I made these scenes here. So this is the first scene, which is just the beach, and let me go to the rendered view. This is just the beach which we got, and then I've used the same technique that I use almost everywhere, and that is, let me make myself smaller just in case. Yeah. This technique I use everywhere, where I will put a curve, a circle, and then I'll take my camera and add a follow path constraint and a track to constraint. So this follow path constraint, I've just animated the offset. So you see that this goes from, why we see inside shading. Yeah, this is one thing, like you see, you switch from one workspace to the other, the scene also switches, which causes confusion sometimes. Yeah, so you see that this camera is going from here to here, it's just moving on this curve, and the focus is somewhere here in the center. Okay, that's the first thing. And then you add markers in your timeline and press Ctrl B. So what it does is, if you select this camera and say Ctrl B, then it's going to bind the camera to the marker. So what will happen is, the moment you reach here, automatically this will become your active camera. And again, the same thing is happening. Instead of a curve, we just have a simple line, and we're just animating the offset. And I love this method because there's absolutely it's almost procedural in a way. Like if I want to change the orientation of something, I can just come in here and move the curve down. Like if I want to do a bottom sort of shot, let's say this is what I wanted to do, I could very easily just move the curve down, and that would give me a bottom sort of shot where more of the water and everything would be in frame. But because I wasn't able to create realistic beach, ocean and water, I wanted to actually not cover the water as much as possible. So this kind of I love. And if I want to make it a medium shot of sorts, I can just scale this path down, and so automatically the camera and everything will move along with it. So that's why this is amazing. Even if you look at this other one, if let's say I wanted to move this across here without having to change my keyframes or anything, then it's going to go from here to here. So it's much better than like having to manually keyframe your camera around, because then you'll be having a lot of keyframes moving around here and there, and then if you end up not selecting one of those keyframes, then some weird kind of movements are going to happen. It's going to be a bit messy. So this is the best way I feel I can do it. Now I was talking about some displacement that I've added to each of these trees. So if you go to the trees, I've added displace texture. So if I play it here, you're going to see that there is some kind of, it's very subtle, because obviously the trees are not going to sway like how grasses sway. So there is very subtle movement I've added, and then I selected all of them and I said copy to selected, copy modifiers to selected. But the thing is, this is working through a vertex group. So if I go into my weight paint mode, this vertex group is what determines how much of the movement, because you don't want the base to be moving, right? So inside your weight paint mode, you hold down Alt with weight of 1 and strength of 1, hold down Alt and drag from the top to the bottom here. This will give you like a vertex group of sort, and then you can come in here, it will automatically add a vertex group if this is selected. If you want to make a new vertex group, you can come in here, make a new group, hold down Alt, come down, or however you want to do it. Like you want to do the other way around, like only this much to be affected. Then you come into the modifier and then attach that. Okay, so this I had to do for all the trees here which are in frame at least. So that was a bit of a trouble doing that. These grass are already animated. This is from the scene that I got, so I left it the way it was. I did not do anything to it. The sand is also again got. Okay, let me jump into the ocean material here. If you see the mesh, it is just basically a subdivided plane, extended a lot, and then I've selected all the vertices or the edge loops around the circumference, and done a F3 to sphere command. So the reason we make it a sphere is because if it's a sphere, you are not gonna see the horizon as much. If it's a flat, you're gonna see, if it's a flat thing, you're gonna see that the plane is ending at a certain point. So that's important. Let me scale this up and bring this a little here. Yep. Over here this will look nice. So if I was to just render one single frame, just to show you at 64 samples how much time this one frame is taking. So 21 seconds for this one frame. I think it's because camera culling is active. No, simplifies off. So without even camera culling, it's taking 23 seconds, which is interesting because yesterday was taking a lot more time. So I'm going to come into my shading and we're going to try and look at this water material here inside your object. So how have I made this material? The entire inspiration is from a Stash YouTube tutorial where he explains like everything that is to be done about making a water texture. So it's basically a plane, and what we've firstly done is we've added bump. Control Shift this kind of stuff you get with a bump if you're adding it into the normal, right? So I've just taken a noise texture and added them through two color ramps for roughness and for normal, and then you send it through a bump. Now you can also just like tweak things here. You can come in here and increase the scale of the noise texture. So wait, actually this is affecting something else. The bump is coming from, you see the height is coming from this Musgrave texture. So if I make the scale of this Musgrave bigger, you'll see the waves will get smaller. If I make it smaller, the waves will get bigger. So if I was to come in and Control Shift my water, this is like how you do it, and then you animate the W value, which I've animated through a hashtag frame divided by I think some 5000. So you'll get this kind of subtle movement, and then when you do Control T with mapping node and give the same animation to Y, you'll get more of a directional water. So because of that, you see that the waves are kind of moving in this direction. But that was that, like the main thing is a bump node. Then what I've done is I've added a transparent BSDF through a mix shader. Why transparent BSDF? Because if I was to take this ocean and bring it above your land, because I was trying to do a lot of things where it will look realistic. I spent a lot of time trying to make it realistic, like an actual beach waves and stuff would be. So for that I added a transparent BSDF. Even if I remove it, it will make no difference because I'm not taking the water above the sand in the final render. And for that you've added is camera ray as your factor for the mix shader. Now for foam, this is again from the Stash video. I tried to understand how foam would work. Initially I tried to make a procedural foam using two noise textures passed through a mix node at linear light and here, but then later I just took an image of foam. So if I was to just Control Shift these or this, so we're mixing two different foams into the bump. There's something like this you're getting, and then we've added into a principal BSDF. Now more importantly, what we've done is foam factor. There is a node called ambient occlusion, which is very interesting because what it does is it basically gives you sort of gradient at every point where there is a where this material is intersecting with any other mesh. So if I add a cube here, you'll see wherever the cube is intersecting, at that point you get like this kind of a thing, like a mask to work with, which is exactly what we need for foam. So ambient occlusion, you play with the settings here, pass through color ramp, put that into the factor, and on the bottom socket you add your foam stuff that you've added. So once we put that, you see over here you're gonna get this kind of a foamy thing. But again, this is something I settled with because of no time and quick turnarounds which were expected. But I wasn't very happy with how the foam or the ocean was looking either way. So what was the most important thing that I learned about this whole situation is if you come into your render settings, there is something called inside simplify. Let me enable simplify. This is something you should always do regardless, so your viewport is a little easier to deal with. Maximum subdivisions here, I think 4 is good for render as well. And this is the main important option here, culling, camera culling and distance culling. So let me go into my layout, it's a little more easier. Okay, so I'm going to select this camera, and I think you don't do it camera per camera. You're going to come into the camera culling, say camera culling and distance culling. So 0.1, 0.5. What you need to do is you want to come in here and let's say select one of these, and you want to come into your object data properties, and over here you want to select use camera cull. Okay, now what this does is if it is outside of the camera frame, it is not going to render it. Ideally, that's what should happen. Now these all things, they, because your scene has to be optimized, right? All the things which are outside the camera frame, which are contributing geometry and textures and everything, they should not get rendered. So what you want to do is, now you want to come into your objects, you want to select all your trees, and you want to right click here and say copy to selected. So now camera culling is applied on all these objects. Now what should happen is ideally these ones outside, like if I start from here, now this is a very tricky kind of scene because we're doing an aerial shot, and if in an aerial shot you want maximum of your majority of your landscape to be in frame. So here you don't really have an option, like you can't like have a lot of things disappear. Although if you were to come in here and try, distance culling is also enabled at like say 1 meter, or 1 meter is too much, 0.1 meter, right? And you were to select one of these things and say use distance cull. Again, I'm going to select all the objects in my trees and use distance cull if I was to copy to select it. Now here what should happen is the things which are outside should not be rendered, or like at a distance away from this. The only problem with the camera cull situation in Blender, I feel, is you can't really see visually what is the geometry that is being removed. Like for example here, all these trees are still getting rendered, which is why you're seeing a shadow on the sand. So as far as where I'm concerned right now, this camera culling situation I need to understand better. So that is that. Other than that, this was the first time, if I go into my second scene, I completely UV unwrapped something with using the packaging files for that, instead of trying to like texture paint and calling it a day. So if I come into here, my rendered view, if I could select my bottle, you see this bottle here has been textured perfectly. If I solo this, so you see that this bottle here, if I go into my UV edit, again the scene keeps changing for some reason. I select this and solo this. Yeah, so I made this using a curve like we always do, and this is something that I was provided from the client side, that like the packaging as in how it would open up, and I UV unwrapped the whole thing, and then I used this free add-on called UV squares, and you select this thing called 2 square grid. So initially this would be like a cylinder when you project it, so you make it square that way, and then when that square thing is done, you just come in here and adjust it. So for example, if I select this part, and if this is not like fitting properly, I can come in here and say shift right click here and to 2D cursor, and you say SX, so that's gonna make it bigger or smaller, so you adjust it like you want. So this was nice because for the first time I did a proper texturing and UV unwrapping on a surface. And the other thing here is just a glass shader. Glass shader mixed with transparent BSDF, which you will see in rendered view, not material view. Yep. So glass shader mixed with transparent BSDF. I think that's pretty much all that I had to document here. Now I'm going to switch to talking about IRender. IRender is basically I have to look at what the exact description they give is, but it allows you to use remote computers or remote desktops and use multiple GPUs to get your render done. So there is this option that you can use 6 RTX 4090s to render your project. And as I said yesterday morning, I was in such a stuck where I didn't quite know how I would be able to render all of these things in like half a day or less than that. So I thought this is the only option that I can. And the bottom line for the whole IRender situation is that it is a great tool in like an emergency situation where you have to render on a deadline and send something out. It gets the job done, like whatever it says it does it, but it is expensive. It is very, very expensive. So I'm gonna walk you through. Okay, so this is IRender GPU. This is how the interface looks, and you come into here, machine GPU, and you can create a machine for yourself, right? So you see I have created 2 machines here. One is for Stable Diffusion. I tried running Stable Diffusion Difforum through it. Both these machines are 6 RTX 4090s. If you want to use something else, you can come in here and just pick whatever is available. So you see one 4090 is currently available at 8.2R. Okay, you can create a machine for that. This is what I was using, 6 4090s at 42R. Okay, and whatever is available based on that, you can create a machine. So I created 2. The one that I used extensively was this Blender machine, which is again 6 4090s. And yeah, that's how it works. Now if you come into payment here, the one thing that I could not figure out earlier is, you see, you can come in here and you can type an amount, like you can type in 50 for a recharge, because you have to do a minimum recharge of $50 here before you can even create a machine. Before that doesn't allow you to create a machine. So this is something that I figured from their live chat, which is, by the way, it's amazing. Like any problem you have, you can just type in there, and within a few minutes somebody from their team connects with you and solves your problem. So that's that. On that front, your 24/7 support with this company is really amazing. I'm really impressed with that. So yeah, that's what I did. I did $50 twice, which is, you say, accumulated $100 here, and I still have a 15.49 R balance. So R is basically a currency that IRender uses, and it's same as dollars in my opinion. So the way it worked is $50 transaction for 1 hour. So you can consider it that way, that you have to spend $50 to be able to use what I used, the high-end machine of 6 4090s for an hour. And $50 rendering for an hour is very expensive. For me, it's super expensive, especially because these are projects that I'm doing for my full-time job. So yeah, this is not very sustainable, at least for me. But I'm going to show you a bit of how that went. So I started off by booting the machine. So you have to come in here and you have to boot the machine, and then before you actually run it, what you want to do is you want to transfer all your files. So that because the moment you start, right, there's going to be a button here which says connect to that machine. The moment you start, there's like a meter that will start up at the top, and it'll be like your points are going and your minutes are going, and after like your balance is gone, the server will shut down automatically and all your progress and everything will be lost. So you want to make sure that you're very efficient before you run this system, right? So you come in here and you press on this button, connect. Okay, and yeah, I chose Windows 10 because Windows 11 looks a bit weird on their system. So in input folder, I added, what you want to do is you want to come in here. Wait, let me show here as well. You want to come into the transfer data section. Okay, when you come into transfer data section, you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 drives here. What you are interested in is in the input drive and in the output drive. So in the input drive, I placed this entire folder, because I was like, maybe some textures or some images or something are missing. I don't want that scene to happen once the machine is already running. So I copied the entire folder for this project in here in input drive. Now once you do start, and in the output drive, you're gonna you're gonna copy all of your render files, but this is later. What you're gonna do is, once you do start, and you're gonna see that in my screen recording here, once you do start, and I made this machine with Blender pre-installed, so I do not have to waste time starting Blender. The first thing you want to do is you want to take this folder that you made in input Z, you want to copy that and paste into desktop. So you want to run Blender, you want to run all your softwares, and you want to do the encoding, and you want to do everything inside your C drive. not on any of the other drives, because let's say if there's an internet connection or something that is a problem, you lose internet connection in between, your progress is going to go away if you're using the software or if your files are stored on any of the other drives. So you want to copy that to the desktop and then open Blender through the desktop. So I'm opening Blender here. Okay, now I just dragged my project here, and you see I'm kind of a bit nervous here because it was the first time using it. You see over here at the top, this is what I was talking about by meters going on, like you've used 4 minutes and you've used 3.38 points, and I had only balance of 42 points, so I had to do everything very, very quickly. So I came in here, and the benchmark that I had in my mind is, okay, the scene is taking 2 minutes without optimization, about 2 minutes to render on my system with 3060 Ti. So I rendered one frame here and it was taking like 30 seconds, and I was a bit concerned, like, why is this taking 30 seconds? And then I realized that none of the GPUs are actually being used. So I opened Task Manager, I'm like, no GPU is being used, which is where it clicked me that you have to go into Blender's preferences. I've actually put it on render animation, and that's when I'm realizing that only the CPU is being used, which is a 32 core CPU. That's not bad, but I stopped the render here. Okay, and I went back to my Blender and I went to preferences. So I press F4, preferences, and in your system, this is the first thing you want to do is you want to come in here and enable CUDA or OptiX. So all of your RTX cards will be selected. You see 6 RTX 4090. Seeing that in the system is like a dream. When you come in here, you see save preferences. I don't know why I unchecked one. And now when you again hit render, actually the initial render is still going on in the background, which is something I have to stop. Yeah, now when I hit render for one single frame, I saw the difference with the GPUs, and it came down from 30 seconds to like 9 seconds. So on an average, what was taking me 150 on my system, with these 6 RTX 4090 was taking like 8 to 9 seconds, because the scene is a little complex. So then I went to my render properties, and then I said, again, your output path has to be on the C drive and not on the network drives. On desktop only. Do it on desktop, and then in the end copy those files or your PNG sequences and paste it into your which drive. Let me show that as well. Paste it over here into your output folder here, because from here then afterwards you can come in here and download it to your system. It's very simple to use that way, and it's very efficient as well. So like right now here you'll see that I'm gonna render the whole animation, which over here I think the first scene is, I don't know, 150 170 frames or something. The only concern I had is, you see all these GPUs, they're not being used 100%. So even though there are 6 GPUs, each GPU will be used like 10% or something, which I don't quite know how to fix that. But I looked up online and they said that Blender uses CUDA. So if you change that from 3D to CUDA, you will see your GPU utilization properly. So yeah, right now you'll see that it's getting rendered in real time. And you see that I've used 17 minutes and 12 points already. So this is, as I said, it's amazing. Like, you get exactly what you need from this service. But the only problem I feel is that it's very expensive. Like $50. I spent $50, recharged twice, so $100, like around 8,000 rupees, 8,500 or something, for rendering 3 scenes, like 2 scenes. One, the third scene, the sunset scene that I showed, that I rendered on my system only, which took so long. But for 2 scenes, rendering 2 scenes, 8,000 is like very expensive for me. That was my only concern. Yeah, so you see now that I've opened the second scene here, and I'm trying to render this now. So we've used 43 minutes and 30 points. Yeah, so for this scene you see that GPU is being used, but you see the graph is a bit sporadic, like it's not continuously being used, which is, I don't know why, but yeah. Bottom line is, if I did not use this service, I wouldn't be able to render this entire video and send out yesterday. It just would not be possible. So you see what happened here is, I'm at 42 points, okay, 42.067 was my balance, and 42.4 I've exceeded it a little bit. So I was like, maybe this works even when the balance is out. But no, you'll see that the server will automatically shut down. So before that would happen, like the moment I reach like 40 points or something, all of the progress that I had done so far, like right now you see we're rendering frame 85, so like 70 frames or something, I copied it to the output drive in here so that I don't lose that once the server shut down. So yeah, that was that. Yeah, you see here automatically inside your machine GPU, you'll see shutting down will come. So all of that progress is gone. It's not there. Of course, the next time you again run this machine, your progress will be there. Your Blender, I think your progress will be there because we're putting it in the C drive, right? All of these things. So you're not gonna lose anything. Even if you like rendered 15 more frames, it's gonna be there in your C drive, and you can, but you have to run it again. For that you need balance, and for that you need to put money into this. So that was a little overview from my end of IRender GPU. Again, it's amazing. A few points that I had written down before recording. It is great, does what's needed, but extremely expensive. That's my only concern with this system. It's not sustainable. Like for a one-off situation where you're on a very heavy timeline and you have no other option, you have to quickly render something out, you can use it, and if you have the money. But sustainable option, like replace all of your physical cards with this, I don't think this is gonna work, because you're much better off just investing into a good RTX card than using this like subscription where you have to keep giving money. Okay, so 50, this is something I said, minimum transaction is not 230. It looks like it's 230 when you come in here to payment. I didn't know that you can come here and change this, so it's not minimum 230, it is minimum 50. An awesome live chat feature. You can ask whatever you want at any point and they very quickly answer. Great documentation. If you go to the YouTube channel, there are a lot of videos about how to use it with Blender, and I think C4D and everything as well. For Stable Diffusion as well, they have a great video. So I still have 15.49 R. Basically I can use it for like 16-17 more minutes because I stopped it midway, and the last scene I rendered it on my system only. The other thing that I want to also show before I end this session, which has been 35 minutes, which is the CG clothes video that I've made. That is done with the final renders and everything, and I'm just gonna play those exports that I made yesterday from this trust. I'll play it in the grid fashion. The grid will start like this. This is the first video where this is falling down and we say premium activewear. That's a continuous loop. Then the next video is the main video, which is like combined, this one, second one and third one. This is a new addition I added yesterday. And the third one is just this loop. So this t-shirt and track, this walk cycle loop for 400 frames I rendered yesterday on my system only. It took like 2 hours 15 minutes or something. But yeah, on that note, I also want to mention that there is a very heated discussion going on now in my world, in my universe, of getting an RTX 4090 card, but it's very expensive at the moment. There is also an option of getting an RTX 4060 card and putting that into my system, so then we'll have a 3060 Ti and a 4060 card. That will be relatively cheaper, but I'm trying to think of, do I go down that route, or do I make like a one-time investment with RTX 4090, for which the rendered part would be secured for the next two or 2.5 years at least, because this 4060 again after a year I'll have to again update, and this is a cumbersome process to keep going through again. So that's one thing I'm thinking. I'll keep the vlog updated on that. Thanks so much for being in the CUD. I'll catch you maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. Peace.